Today we're going to talk about how to adjust your seat properly, not only the height of your seat, but the fore-aft adjustment. To do that, we solicited Joe's help again. Thanks, Joe, for helping out.
You're welcome.
What you want to do is sit on your bike. You want the ball of your foot over your pedal, which if you saw the last segment about how to adjust your cleats, it explains that. So pedal around. And what you're looking for is you want to have a slight bend at your knee at the bottom of the pedal stroke. Now, the way Joe's pedaling right now, notice when he hits the bottom of the stroke, his leg locks and his foot at the bottom is pointed toe down, which is an indication that he's reaching for the pedal at the bottom of the stroke, meaning that the seat's too high. As he's pedaling through an arc, his knee is accelerating, and when he snaps it into position at the bottom of the stroke, that causes knee strain. On a long ride, that's going to cause tendonitis, a lot of discomfort. You don't want to do it. The other indication is, keep pedaling. You can see his hips are rocking on the seat, which is also an indication that the seat's too high. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask Joe to jump off. I'm going to lower the seat a little bit and get him to come back on again. All right, jump back up again. As he's pedaling now, notice his hips are not rocking. At the bottom of the pedal stroke, he has a slight bend to his knee, and his toe is not pointed down like it was earlier. Once your seat is at the proper height, the next step is how do you determine the right fore-aft position of the seat? Now, to determine that, you need the two crank arms parallel with the ground, and with the help of a plumb bob, you drop a perpendicular from right behind the kneecap, and you want it to fall just behind the center of the pedal spindle. Now, before you do all that, you have to make sure you're sitting on the seat in a very comfortable position, meaning if you had to sit on that seat for an hour without moving, is that where you'd want to sit? And if it is, that's the position we're looking for. So would you say you're there?
Sure.
Okay. Cranks are parallel to the ground. You want your foot to be roughly flat, pretty much that position. The ball of his foot's a little bit lower than the heel, not much though. Then we drop a plumb bob, and what you want to feel for is that little indentation just behind the kneecap. So you want to feel for the little indentation, drop the plumb bob, and you want the center to fall through the center of the pedal. So that's about right there. So he's just a little bit behind. I'm going to move it forward just a little bit. You want this to be more like in this range right there. So if you want to hop off for a second. Under the seat, there's two metal rails that are running parallel. So if you loosen up the bolts that secure the clamp, you can actually slide the seat forward, backward, and depending on the configuration of the seat post, you can actually change the angle of the seat. For now, our main concern is just getting the seat forward and backward. We'll talk about the angle of the seat in a second. So Joe, jump back up. Okay, go back to that same position. Right like that. Now when you drop the plumb bob, he is just ever slightly behind, which for road riding, you want it to be just a little bit behind the spindle. Maybe, let's say, depending on what you're doing, about 3/16 of an inch. The further back your knee is relative to that point, you have more torque, less power. What that means is that you can climb hills, but you don't have speed. You could push hard, in other words. That's why when you climb a hill, instinctively you tend to push backwards on your seat because that moves your knee backwards, giving you more torque. If you're doing like a spinning class or a triathlon or you're a sprinter, you would want the plumb bob to be more over the pedal like that. And if you're doing really long distance triathlons, you would want to be even further forward yet, more like that position. If you're doing primarily hill climbing, you want to be a little bit further back, about like that. But for general road riding, like what Joe does, his position is pretty good. For some triathletes, depending on how serious you are and the length of your events, you could put your knee slightly in front of the center of the pedal spindle. Once the seat position has been determined forward and backward, the next issue is the angle the seat makes. Most people would set their seat so that it's either parallel to the ground or the nose is up ever so slightly. A lot of times your belief is that if you nose the seat down, it's more comfortable, but it isn't, because what happens is when you sit on it, it tends to push you forward and it puts too much weight on your hands. So a flat seat or the nose up just a little bit. If your seat height is too low, what's going to happen is as you're riding, your leg is not going to stretch out, the muscles aren't going to stretch, and you're going to get a lactic acid buildup. In plain English, it means if your seat's too low, your quads are going to burn.